Maria Santos had never been the type of person who drew attention to herself. At 28 years old, she carried herself with quiet dignity through the halls of Springfield Community College, where she had enrolled in the advanced mathematics program after years of working double shifts at a local diner. Her weathered hands, stained with years of coffee and grease, told a different story than her crisp notebooks and carefully organized binders. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Maria entered Professor Davidson's classroom that Tuesday morning. The advanced calculus course was notorious on campus, a filter class that separated the serious students from those who thought they could cruise through higher mathematics. Professor Davidson, a stern man in his 50s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, had built his reputation on academic rigor and zero tolerance for what he called mathematical mediocrity. 23 students filled the classroom that day, most of them traditional college-age kids who had sailed through high school mathematics with minimal effort. They wore designer backpacks, carried the latest laptops, and spoke casually about their parents' expectations and trust funds. Maria sat in the third row, her second-hand textbook marked with careful notes written in blue ink, her scientific calculator, a gift from her teenage daughter, placed precisely beside her notebook. Professor Davidson strode to the front of the classroom with his characteristic brisk pace. His eyes swept across the room with the practiced assessment of someone who had taught mathematics for over 2 decades. He had seen thousands of students pass through his classes, and he prided himself on being able to predict, within the first few weeks, who would succeed and who would drop out before the semester's end. Today we begin our exploration of multivariable calculus, he announced, his voice carrying the authority of years spent lecturing. This is where mathematics stops being a game of memorization and becomes a true test of intellectual capacity. Some of you will discover that you have what it takes to think at this level. Others will realize that perhaps your talents lie elsewhere. The professor's gaze lingered on Maria for a moment longer than necessary. He had noticed her the first day of class older than the others, quietly taking notes while her classmates whispered about weekend plans. In his experience, non-traditional students fell into 2 categories, those who brought exceptional motivation and life experience to their studies, and those who harbored unrealistic expectations about their academic abilities after years away from formal education. As Professor Davidson began writing complex equations on the whiteboard, his chalk moving with practiced precision, Maria opened her notebook to a fresh page. She had spent the previous evening reviewing the assigned reading, working through practice problems until well past midnight while her family slept. Her daughter Sophia had found her at the kitchen table at 2 a.m, surrounded by textbooks and empty coffee cups. "Mom, you need to get some sleep," Sophia had said, concern evident in her voice. Maria had looked up from her calculations, pencil still in hand. "Just a few more problems, Mija. I want to be ready for class tomorrow." Sophia was 17, a senior in high school who had inherited her mother's determination along with her warm brown eyes. She understood better than anyone the sacrifices her mother was making to pursue this degree. Maria had dropped out of high school 20 years earlier when Sophia's father left them, forcing her to work multiple jobs to support herself and her infant daughter. Now, as Professor Davidson explained the intricacies of partial derivatives, Maria absorbed every word. She had learned to listen differently than her younger classmates. Where they might hear abstract concepts, she heard opportunities. Every equation represented a step closer to the engineering degree she had dreamed about since she was Sophia's age, when she had spent hours sketching bridge designs and reading about space exploration. The class period progressed with Professor Davidson presenting increasingly complex material. He moved through the concepts at a rapid pace, pausing only briefly to answer questions. Several students looked overwhelmed, their note-taking becoming more frantic as the hour wore on. Others had given up entirely, their attention drifting to their phones or the window overlooking the campus quad. Maria's pen moved steadily across her notebook pages, capturing not just the equations but the reasoning behind each step. She had developed a system over the past 2 years of community college color-coded notes, cross-references to textbook pages, and margin comments that connected new concepts to material from previous classes. Her approach to learning had been forged by necessity, she couldn't afford to miss anything. "Now then," Professor Davidson said, setting down his chalk and turning to face the class. "Let's see who has been paying attention. I want each of you to work through this problem set independently. You have 20 minutes. He distributed a worksheet containing 5 complex calculus problems that required students to apply the concepts he had just presented. The room fell silent except for the scratching of pencils and the occasional sigh of frustration. Maria read through all 5 problems first, a strategy she had learned from her study group, then began working methodically through each one. As she calculated, her mind wandered briefly to the conversation she had overheard before class. 2 students discussing their weekend plans had mentioned their parents' expectations about graduate school and career paths. One had complained about the pressure to maintain a high GPA for medical school admissions. Another had expressed anxiety about disappointing parents who were paying for college. Maria understood pressure differently. Her motivation didn't come from external expectations but from internal necessity. Every grade represented progress toward a career that could provide stability for her family. Every successful assignment brought her closer to becoming the engineer she had always dreamed of being. 20 minutes passed quickly. Professor Davidson called time and began collecting the worksheets. As he gathered the papers, he made casual comments about the difficulty level and reminded students about the upcoming midterm examination. Several students groaned audibly at the mention of the test. "I'll grade these tonight and return them Thursday," he announced. Remember, this material builds on itself. If you're struggling with these concepts now, you'll find the remainder of the semester increasingly challenging. As students began packing their belongings, Professor Davidson's attention was drawn to Maria's worksheet. Her solutions were not only correct but demonstrated a level of understanding that impressed him. Her work was neat, methodical, and showed clear reasoning at each step. More importantly, she had attempted all 5 problems and completed them within the time limit. The next class session arrived with the typical pre-exam anxiety that characterized Professor Davidson's courses. Students filed in with varying degrees of confidence, some clutching energy drinks and looking as though they had spent the night cramming, others maintaining the casual demeanor of those who had either thoroughly prepared or completely given up. Professor Davidson entered the classroom carrying the graded worksheets. His expression gave nothing away as he began returning papers to students. Some received their grades with satisfied nods, others with visible disappointment. The range of scores was typical for his class: a few excellent marks, a larger number of average grades, and several failing scores that would serve as wake-up calls. When he reached Maria's desk, he paused. Her worksheet bore not just a grade but a brief comment written in his precise handwriting: "Excellent work. See me after class." The grade at the top was a perfect score, but what had caught Professor Davidson's attention was the quality of her mathematical reasoning and the clarity of her presentation. Maria read the comment with a mixture of pride and apprehension. In her experience, being asked to stay after class could mean many things, not all of them positive. She focused her attention on the day's lecture, taking her usual detailed notes while wondering what Professor Davidson wanted to discuss with her. The lecture covered applications of multivariable calculus to real-world engineering problems. As Professor Davidson presented examples of how these mathematical concepts applied to structural analysis, fluid dynamics, and electrical engineering, Maria felt a familiar excitement. These weren't abstract academic exercises, they were tools she would need in her chosen career. After class ended and the other students had filed out, Maria approached Professor Davidson's desk. He was organizing his lecture notes, but looked up when she approached. "You wanted to see me, Professor?" Professor Davidson studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Your work on yesterday's problem set was exceptional. Not just correct, but sophisticated in its approach. How long have you been studying calculus?" Maria shifted her backpack on her shoulder, uncertain where the conversation was heading. "I took Calculus I and II here at the community college. Before that, I had to start with basic algebra when I came back to school 3 years ago." This information surprised Professor Davidson. Most students in his advanced calculus course had years of high school mathematics preparation followed by college-level coursework. The idea that someone could progress from basic algebra to advanced calculus in just 3 years while presumably managing other life responsibilities was remarkable. "What's your background?" he asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Maria hesitated, unsure how much to share. I dropped out of high school 20 years ago. I've been working as a waitress, but I decided to go back to school to become an engineer. I started with the GED program and worked my way up through the math sequence. Professor Davidson leaned back in his chair, reassessing his initial impression of this quiet student. He had taught thousands of students over his career, but few had demonstrated such clear determination combined with natural mathematical ability. Most non-traditional students struggled with the advanced concepts, their years away from academic study creating gaps that were difficult to overcome. "What kind of engineering interests you?" he asked. "Civil engineering," Maria replied without hesitation. "I want to design bridges and infrastructure that will help communities. I've always been fascinated by how mathematics translates into structures that can support enormous loads and withstand natural forces." The conversation was interrupted by a knock on the classroom door. Another instructor needed to set up for the next class, reminding both Maria and Professor Davidson that their discussion was taking place during a busy academic day. "I don't want to keep you," Professor Davidson said, gathering his materials. "But I want you to know that your mathematical intuition is quite strong. Have you considered participating in the regional mathematics competition? It's an annual event where community colleges send their top students to compete in problem-solving challenges." Maria had never heard of such a competition, but the idea intrigued her. "When is it?" "Next month. I typically select 3 or 4 students from my advanced courses to participate. The problems are challenging, but I think you would represent our college well." He paused, studying her reaction. "Think about it. Let me know by next week if you're interested." As Maria left the classroom that day, her mind raced with possibilities she had never considered. A mathematics competition seemed like something reserved for prodigies and students from prestigious universities, not former high school dropouts who worked their way through community college. Yet Professor Davidson's invitation suggested that perhaps her abilities were more significant than she had realized. That evening, Maria sat at her kitchen table reviewing the day's lecture notes. Sophia was at the table beside her, working on her own homework, advanced placement calculus, ironically the same level of mathematics her mother was mastering for the first time. The parallel wasn't lost on either of them. "How was class today?" Sophia asked, looking up from her own mathematical calculations. Maria told her daughter about Professor Davidson's invitation to the mathematics competition. Sophia's reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. "Mom, you have to do it. You're amazing at math. I've watched you work through problems that I can't even understand yet." The encouragement from her daughter meant everything to Maria. Sophia had been her biggest supporter throughout the challenging process of returning to school, celebrating every successful exam and offering comfort during the difficult moments when Maria questioned whether she was capable of achieving her goals. As mother and daughter worked side by side that evening, Maria found herself seriously considering Professor Davidson's invitation. The competition represented an opportunity to challenge herself in ways she had never imagined possible. More than that, it offered validation that her mathematical abilities were worthy of recognition beyond the confines of community college classrooms. The next few days passed with Maria researching the regional mathematics competition online. She discovered that it attracted students from community colleges across 3 states, challenging them with complex problems that required creative thinking and advanced mathematical knowledge. Previous year's problems were available online, and Maria spent her free time working through them, testing her abilities against the standards of regional academic competition. Each problem she solved successfully increased her confidence. These weren't just textbook exercises but mathematical challenges that required the kind of thinking she had been developing over her years of intensive study. The problems combined elements from multiple areas of mathematics, requiring competitors to synthesize knowledge and approach solutions creatively. By the end of the week, Maria had made her decision. She approached Professor Davidson after Friday's class session, her usual notebook and calculator in hand. "I've been thinking about the mathematics competition," she said. "I'd like to participate if the invitation is still open." Professor Davidson smiled, the first time Maria had seen him display such obvious pleasure. "Excellent. I was hoping you would accept. We'll need to begin preparation sessions next week. The competition problems require a different kind of mathematical thinking than typical coursework. As they discussed the training schedule and competition format, Maria felt a familiar sensation, the same mixture of excitement and determination that had carried her through 3 years of rebuilding her education from the ground up. She was stepping into territory that once would have seemed impossible, but her journey had taught her that impossible was often just another word for challenging. The conversation ended with Professor Davidson providing her with materials to begin preparation for the competition. As Maria walked across campus that afternoon, her backpack heavy with additional study materials, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed since making the decision to return to school. 3 years earlier, she had been a high school dropout working double shifts to support her family. Now she was being invited to represent her college in regional academic competition. The transformation hadn't been easy, it had required sacrificing social activities, working extra hours to pay for tuition, and studying while her peers relaxed. But each step had led to opportunities she never could have imagined. That weekend, as Maria prepared for the intensive training sessions that would help her prepare for competition, she began to understand that Professor Davidson's invitation represented more than just an academic opportunity. It was recognition that her unconventional path to education had produced something valuable: mathematical thinking that could compete at the highest levels of community college academics. The following week would bring new challenges as she began training for a competition that would test not just her mathematical knowledge but her ability to perform under pressure alongside the most talented students from colleges across the region. For now, though, she allowed herself a moment of pride in how far she had come and anticipation for how much further she might be able to go. The preparation sessions for the regional mathematics competition began the following Monday in a small conference room adjacent to Professor Davidson's office. Maria arrived 15 minutes early, as was her habit, carrying a thermos of coffee and a notebook dedicated specifically to competition preparation. She had spent the weekend reviewing advanced problem-solving techniques and working through sample questions from previous years. When Professor Davidson entered the room, he was accompanied by 3 other students Maria recognized from various mathematics courses around campus. There was Kevin, a 19-year-old computer science major who had skipped several grade levels in high school, Jennifer, a physics student known for her analytical approach to complex problems, and Marcus, a pre-engineering student whose confidence in mathematics was legendary among his peers. The dynamic in the room shifted as introductions were made. Maria found herself being sized up by her fellow team members, their glances taking in her age, her simple clothing, and her well-worn textbooks. She had experienced this kind of assessment before, the subtle questioning of whether she belonged in advanced academic settings alongside students who had followed more traditional educational paths. Professor Davidson seemed unaware of the social undercurrents as he began explaining the competition format. The regional competition consists of 3 rounds, he said, distributing folders containing detailed information. Individual problem solving, team collaboration, and a final presentation round where teams explain their solutions to a panel of judges. Kevin leaned back in his chair with casual confidence. How difficult are we talking about? I've been doing competition mathematics since middle school. Most of these regional competitions are pretty straightforward if you know the standard techniques. Professor Davidson raised an eyebrow. I think you'll find this competition more challenging than you expect. The problems are designed to test mathematical creativity, not just knowledge of standard methods. As the professor outlined the training schedule, Maria listened carefully while observing her teammates. Kevin clearly saw himself as the leader of their group, his comments revealing both mathematical competence and significant ego. Jennifer appeared more cautious but equally confident in her abilities. Marcus seemed friendly enough but shared Kevin's assumption that the competition would be manageable for students of their caliber. The first practice session involved working through problems from the previous year's competition. Professor Davidson distributed a set of 5 challenging questions and announced that they would work individually for 90 minutes before discussing their approaches as a group. Maria read through all 5 problems carefully before beginning. They were unlike anything she had encountered in her coursework, complex scenarios that required combining concepts from multiple areas of mathematics and applying them in novel ways. The problems tested not just computational ability but mathematical insight and creative problem solving. As she worked, Maria became aware of the different approaches her teammates were taking. Kevin attacked the problems aggressively, his pencil moving rapidly as he applied techniques he had memorized from years of competition experience. Jennifer worked more methodically, checking each step carefully before proceeding. Marcus seemed to struggle with the unfamiliar problem formats, his confidence visibly diminishing as the session progressed. Maria's approach was different from all of them. She spent considerable time understanding each problem thoroughly before beginning her calculations. Her solutions developed slowly but steadily, each step building logically on the previous one. Her years of catching up on mathematical foundations had taught her to be thorough rather than fast, comprehensive rather than clever. When Professor Davidson called time, the differences in their results became apparent. Kevin had attempted all 5 problems, but several of his solutions contained errors where he had applied familiar techniques to unfamiliar situations. Jennifer had completed 3 problems correctly but hadn't attempted the more challenging ones. Marcus had struggled throughout the session, completing only 2 problems with mixed success. Maria had completed 4 problems, and her solutions demonstrated a level of mathematical insight that impressed Professor Davidson. Her work showed not just correct answers but clear reasoning and elegant approaches to complex scenarios. More significantly, her solutions to the most difficult problems revealed mathematical thinking that went beyond memorized techniques. Let's discuss problem 3, Professor Davidson said, writing the question on the whiteboard. This was the most challenging of today's set. Maria, would you walk us through your approach? Maria felt the attention of the room focusing on her as she moved to the whiteboard. She had never presented mathematical solutions to a group before, but her understanding of the problem was clear and her confidence in her approach was solid. The key insight, she began writing out her initial analysis, is recognizing that this isn't really a calculus problem disguised as a geometry problem, but a geometry problem that requires calculus tools. Once you see that, the solution becomes much more straightforward. As she explained her reasoning, mapping out each step of her solution, the room grew quiet. Her approach was not only correct but demonstrated mathematical maturity that surprised her teammates. She had seen patterns and connections that the others had missed, developing a solution that was both elegant and efficient. Kevin's expression had shifted from casual confidence to focused attention. That's actually really clever, he admitted after Maria finished her explanation. I was trying to force it into a standard optimization framework, but your geometric insight makes it much cleaner. Professor Davidson nodded approvingly. This is exactly the kind of mathematical thinking that performs well in competition settings. The problems are designed to reward insight over memorization, creativity over standard techniques. The session continued with discussions of the other problems, and a pattern emerged. While Kevin and Jennifer had strong technical skills, Maria consistently demonstrated the kind of mathematical insight that competition problems were designed to test. Her solutions showed not just computational ability but the kind of creative thinking that distinguished exceptional mathematical minds. As the weeks of preparation continued, the team dynamics evolved significantly. Initial assumptions about leadership and mathematical hierarchy gave way to recognition of each member's strengths. Kevin's competition experience proved valuable for understanding formats and time management. Jennifer's analytical precision helped catch errors and refine solutions. Marcus discovered that his engineering background provided useful intuition for applied mathematics problems. Maria emerged as the team's most consistent problem solver, particularly on the most challenging questions. Her approach to mathematics had been shaped by her unconventional educational journey. She had learned to think deeply about problems rather than relying on pattern recognition and memorized techniques. During one particularly intense preparation session, Professor Davidson presented a problem that had stumped teams from major universities in previous years. The question involved finding optimal strategies in a complex scenario that combined elements of game theory, probability, and advanced calculus. The team worked on the problem for over an hour without making significant progress. Kevin had tried multiple standard approaches without success. Jennifer's careful analysis had revealed the problem's complexity but hadn't led to a solution. Marcus had contributed useful insights about the practical constraints but couldn't find a mathematical path forward. Maria had been quiet throughout most of the session, working steadily through different approaches while her teammates discussed various strategies aloud. Finally, she looked up from her calculations with an expression of quiet satisfaction. "I think I found something," she said, moving to the whiteboard. What followed was a masterful demonstration of mathematical problem solving. Maria's solution was not just correct but revealed hidden structure in the problem that made the answer seem almost inevitable once understood. Her approach combined advanced mathematical techniques with intuitive insights about the problem's essential characteristics. "That's remarkable," Professor Davidson said after she finished. "Your solution is actually more elegant than the one published by the competition organizers. You found a better way to think about this problem." The recognition from Professor Davidson was significant, but equally important was the reaction of her teammates. Kevin, whose initial arrogance had been tempered by weeks of challenging problems, was genuinely impressed. "I never would have thought to approach it that way," he said. "You're seeing things the rest of us are missing." As the competition date approached, Maria found herself in an unexpected position. She had become not just a valued team member but, arguably, their strongest mathematical talent. The realization was both exciting and intimidating. She was about to compete against some of the most talented community college students in the region, representing her school alongside classmates who had initially questioned her presence on the team. The weekend before the competition, Professor Davidson held a final preparation session. Instead of working new problems, he focused on competition strategy and mental preparation. He emphasized the importance of staying calm under pressure, managing time effectively, and supporting each other as a team. "You've all improved dramatically over these weeks of preparation," he told them. "You're ready to represent our college with distinction. Remember that mathematics competitions aren't just about finding the right answers, they're about demonstrating clear thinking under pressure." As the session ended, Professor Davidson asked Maria to stay behind for a brief conversation. Her teammates filed out, discussing travel arrangements and last-minute preparation plans for the upcoming competition. "I want you to know," Professor Davidson said once they were alone, "that in 25 years of teaching, I've rarely seen such rapid development in mathematical problem-solving ability. Your approach to these competition problems has been consistently insightful." Maria appreciated the recognition, but she was also curious about something that had been puzzling her throughout the preparation process. "Professor, can I ask you something? Why did you invite me to join the team? I know my grades were good, but Kevin and Jennifer have much stronger backgrounds in competition mathematics." Professor Davidson considered his answer carefully. Competitive mathematics isn't just about background knowledge or test-taking ability. It's about mathematical thinking, the ability to see patterns, make connections, and approach problems creatively. You've demonstrated that kind of thinking consistently. He paused, organizing his thoughts. Your unconventional path to advanced mathematics has actually been an advantage. You've learned to really understand concepts rather than just applying memorized techniques. That's exactly what these competitions are designed to test. As Maria left the campus that afternoon, her mind was focused on the competition just days away. The weeks of preparation had transformed not just her problem-solving abilities but her understanding of her own mathematical potential. She was no longer the uncertain community college student worried about belonging in advanced classes. She had become a serious mathematical competitor, ready to test her abilities against the best students from colleges across the region. That evening, Sophia helped her mother organize her materials for the trip to the competition. They packed calculators, extra pencils, the notebook filled with problem-solving strategies, and the folder containing all of Professor Davidson's preparation materials. "I'm so proud of you, Mom," Sophia said as they finished packing. 3 years ago, you were afraid to take your first algebra class. Now you're competing at the regional level." Maria reflected on her daughter's observation. The journey from basic algebra to competitive mathematics had been challenging, but each step had built confidence and ability that prepared her for the next level. The competition would be her most significant mathematical challenge yet, but it was also an opportunity to demonstrate how far determination and hard work could take someone willing to persist through difficulties. The night before leaving for the competition, Maria reviewed her notes one final time. She wasn't looking for new techniques or strategies, her preparation was complete. Instead, she was reinforcing her confidence in her abilities and her understanding of her role on the team. Her teammates had various motivations for participating in the competition. Kevin saw it as validation of his mathematical talents and preparation for transfer to a prestigious university. Jennifer wanted to challenge herself and gain experience that would help with graduate school applications. Marcus hoped to prove that his engineering aptitude extended to pure mathematical problem-solving. Maria's motivation was both simpler and more profound. The competition represented the culmination of her transformation from high school dropout to serious mathematical student. More than winning or losing, it was an opportunity to demonstrate to herself and others that mathematical ability could develop at any age and from any starting point. The regional mathematics competition would test not just her problem-solving skills but her ability to perform under pressure alongside students who had followed more traditional paths to mathematical excellence. After weeks of preparation, she was ready to discover how her unique educational journey had prepared her for this challenge. As she turned off the light that night, Maria felt a familiar mixture of nervousness and excitement. Tomorrow would bring the most significant academic challenge of her life, but it would also provide an opportunity to show what was possible when determination met opportunity. The competition would measure not just mathematical knowledge but the kind of thinking that could transform lives and open doors to futures that once seemed impossible to achieve. The morning of the regional mathematics competition dawned crisp and clear as the Springfield Community College team made their way across 3 states to Central University, which hosted the annual event. Maria sat quietly in the passenger seat of Professor Davidson's car, reviewing her notebook one final time while her teammates discussed strategy and shared nervous energy in the back seat. Central University's campus was imposing in a way that community colleges rarely were: sprawling brick buildings, manicured lawns, and students who carried themselves with the confidence that came from attending a prestigious institution. As their car pulled into the parking area designated for competition participants, Maria could see teams from other colleges gathering their materials and making final preparations. The competition check-in took place in the university's mathematics building, a modern structure filled with lecture halls and research facilities that dwarfed anything at Springfield Community College. Registration tables were set up in the main atrium, where students presented identification and received their competition materials while professors coordinated with event organizers. As Professor Davidson handled the administrative details, Maria observed the other teams. Most participants appeared to be traditional college-age students, many wearing shirts or jackets identifying their schools. Several teams included students who clearly knew each other from previous competitions, their casual discussions of past events and mutual acquaintances revealing a community of competitive mathematics that Maria was entering for the first time. "First time here?" asked a friendly voice beside her. Maria turned to find a young woman about Sophia's age, wearing a jacket from Riverside Community College. Her name tag identified her as Amanda Chen, and her approach was genuinely welcoming rather than competitive. "Yes," Maria replied. "I'm still getting used to the idea that I'm here at all." Amanda smiled knowingly. "I felt the same way at my first competition 2 years ago. These events can be intimidating, but everyone here loves mathematics enough to give up their weekend for problem solving. That creates a pretty supportive atmosphere once you get past the initial nerves." Their conversation was interrupted by an announcement directing all participants to the main auditorium for the opening ceremony. As teams filed into the large lecture hall, Maria found herself seated alongside students from colleges across 3 states, some from institutions she recognized, others from schools she had never heard of. The competition director, Dr. Patricia Williams from Central University, took the stage to welcome participants and explain the day's format. The individual round would last 3 hours and consist of 10 problems of increasing difficulty. Following a lunch break, teams would have 2 hours to collaborate on 5 complex problems that required multiple approaches and careful coordination. The final round would involve team presentations of solutions to the judges. These problems, Dr. Williams explained, are designed to test mathematical creativity, not just computational skill. "We're looking for elegant solutions, clear reasoning, and the ability to communicate complex ideas effectively. Remember that this is as much about the journey to your answer as the answer itself." As participants were directed to their assigned rooms for the individual round, Maria felt the familiar pre-test anxiety that had accompanied every important examination in her academic career. But this anxiety was different. It was mixed with genuine excitement about the mathematical challenges ahead. The individual competition room was arranged with widely spaced desks, each equipped with scratch paper, multiple pencils, and a copy of the 10-problem examination. Maria found her assigned seat and spent a few minutes organizing her materials according to the system she had developed during weeks of preparation. When the proctor announced the start of the individual round, silence settled over the room as 48 students opened their examination booklets and encountered problems unlike anything they had seen in regular coursework. Maria read through all 10 problems before beginning any calculations, a strategy that had served her well throughout her mathematical education. The problems ranged from challenging but manageable applications of familiar concepts to genuinely novel scenarios that required creative mathematical thinking. Problem 1 involved optimization techniques applied to a real-world manufacturing scenario. Maria recognized the basic framework immediately and completed it efficiently, building confidence for the more challenging problems ahead. Problem 2 required an innovative application of probability theory to a game theory situation. This took longer, but Maria's careful analysis of the problem's structure led to a solution that satisfied her understanding of both the mathematical requirements and the practical constraints. By the time she reached problem 5, Maria was working at the boundary of her mathematical knowledge. The problem involved advanced concepts from several areas of mathematics, requiring her to synthesize techniques from calculus, linear algebra, and number theory in ways that weren't obvious from the problem statement. As she worked through the complex calculations, Maria became aware of the tension in the room. Some students were moving quickly through the problems, their pencils scratching rapidly across paper as they applied familiar techniques. Others appeared to be struggling, their body language revealing frustration with problems that resisted standard approaches. Maria's approach was methodical and thorough. Each problem received careful analysis before she began calculating, and her solutions developed step by step with clear reasoning at each stage. She wasn't the fastest problem solver in the room, but her solutions demonstrated the kind of mathematical thinking that the competition was designed to reward. Problem 7 proved to be a turning point. The question involved finding optimal strategies in a complex scenario that combined elements from multiple areas of advanced mathematics. As Maria read through the problem, she recognized that it was similar to the challenging question her team had worked on during preparation, but with several additional complications that made standard approaches inadequate. She spent nearly 40 minutes on problem 7, exploring different approaches and building toward a solution that satisfied all the given constraints. When she finally arrived at an answer she was confident in, she realized that her approach had revealed hidden structure in the problem that made the solution more elegant than she had initially expected. Problems 8 and 9 were extremely challenging, requiring mathematical insights that went beyond course material into the realm of creative problem-solving that distinguished exceptional mathematical minds from merely competent ones. Maria attempted both problems, making significant progress on problem 8 and developing a partial solution to problem 9 that demonstrated her understanding of the underlying mathematical concepts. Problem 10 was notorious among competition participants, a question so difficult that complete solutions were rare and partial credit was meaningful. Maria read through the problem carefully and recognized that it required techniques beyond her current knowledge level. Rather than spending excessive time on an impossible problem, she used her remaining time to review and refine her solutions to the earlier questions. When the proctor called time after 3 hours, Maria felt a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. She had attempted 9 of the 10 problems and felt confident in her solutions to the first 7. More importantly, she had demonstrated the kind of mathematical thinking that her weeks of preparation had developed. During the lunch break, participants gathered in small groups to discuss the morning's problems. Maria listened to conversations around her, gaining insight into how other students had approached the challenging questions. Some students expressed frustration with problems they couldn't solve, while others shared excitement about elegant solutions they had discovered. Kevin found Maria during lunch, his expression revealing both surprise and respect. "That was brutal," he said. "Some of those problems were way harder than anything we practiced with. How do you think you did?" Maria considered her answer carefully. I felt good about most of the problems I attempted. Problem 7 was really interesting once I found the right approach. What about you? Problem 7 killed me, Kevin admitted. I tried 3 different methods and couldn't make any of them work. That was the one you explained to us during practice, wasn't it? The approach you found that was better than the published solution? As they discussed their experiences with the individual round, Maria began to understand that her mathematical intuition had served her well under competition pressure. The problem-solving strategy she had developed through her unconventional educational journey had prepared her for challenges that were difficult even for students with extensive competition experience. The team round began after lunch in a different building, with each 4-person team assigned to a room equipped with whiteboards, markers, and comfortable seating arranged to facilitate collaboration. The 5 team problems were designed to require different approaches and expertise, making effective collaboration essential for success. Professor Davidson served as their advisor during the team round, available to answer procedural questions but not allowed to provide mathematical guidance. As the Springfield team organized their approach to the 5 problems, their weeks of working together became apparent in their smooth coordination and mutual respect. Maria found herself naturally taking a leadership role as they divided the problems according to each member's strengths. Her success with the individual round had boosted her confidence, and her teammates recognized her ability to see patterns and connections that weren't immediately obvious. The first team problem involved a complex optimization scenario with multiple constraints and variables. Jennifer's analytical approach proved perfect for this type of systematic problem solving, and she worked through the calculations methodically while the others provided feedback and verification. Problem 2 required creative applications of probability theory to an unfamiliar situation. Marcus's engineering background provided valuable intuition about the practical aspects of the scenario, while Kevin's competition experience helped identify the mathematical techniques needed for a complete solution. Problems 3 and 4 were where Maria's unique mathematical insight became most valuable. Both questions required seeing beyond surface complexity to identify underlying patterns and structures that made solutions possible. Her ability to approach problems from unexpected angles led to breakthroughs that allowed the team to develop complete solutions. The 5th problem was designed to challenge even the strongest teams. It combined advanced concepts from multiple areas of mathematics in a scenario that required genuine creativity and collaboration. The Springfield team spent over an hour on this problem, building their solution through a process of shared insights and careful verification. As they worked together, Maria realized how much her mathematical thinking had developed through weeks of preparation and competition. She was not just solving problems but contributing to solutions that were beyond what any individual team member could have achieved independently. When time was called for the team round, the Springfield team had completed solutions to 4 of the 5 problems and had made substantial progress on the 5th. More importantly, their solutions demonstrated clear reasoning, elegant mathematics, and effective collaboration. The final round consisted of team presentations to a panel of judges. Each team selected their best solution from the team round and prepared a 10-minute presentation that explained their approach, reasoning, and results. The presentations were evaluated not just on mathematical correctness but on clarity of communication and insight into problem-solving strategies. The Springfield team chose to present their solution to Problem 4, which had required the kind of creative mathematical thinking that Maria had contributed. As they prepared their presentation, Professor Davidson offered strategic advice about communicating complex mathematics to an audience of experts. When their turn came to present, Maria found herself at the whiteboard explaining the key insight that had made their solution possible. Her explanation was clear, logical, and demonstrated the kind of mathematical maturity that impressed the panel of judges from universities across the region. The critical recognition, she explained to the judges, is that this apparent calculus problem is really about recognizing patterns in discrete mathematics. Once you see that structure, the solution becomes much more manageable. The judges asked several follow-up questions that tested the team's understanding of their solution and their ability to extend their approach to related problems. Maria fielded most of the questions, her responses revealing not just knowledge of their specific solution but understanding of the broader mathematical concepts involved. As the presentation concluded, Maria felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had not just participated in the regional mathematics competition but had contributed meaningfully to her team's performance at every stage of the event. Her unconventional journey to advanced mathematics had prepared her for challenges that tested the best community college students in the region. The awards ceremony took place in the main auditorium as all participants gathered to hear results and recognize outstanding performances. As Dr. Williams announced winners in various categories, Maria reflected on how dramatically her life had changed since making the decision to return to school. 3 years earlier, she had been afraid to attempt basic algebra. Now she had competed successfully in a regional mathematics competition, demonstrating abilities that earned respect from students and professors who had followed more traditional educational paths. Whatever the competition results might be, Maria understood that the most important outcome was already clear. She had proven to herself and others that mathematical ability could develop at any stage of life, that determination could overcome educational disadvantages, and that unconventional paths could lead to exceptional achievements. The real test, however, was yet to come. The results would be announced shortly, but, more significantly, Maria would soon face the question that would define how others perceived her remarkable mathematical journey, and how she would choose to answer would silence a room full of accomplished students and professors. The auditorium buzzed with nervous energy as Dr. Williams prepared to announce the competition results. Maria sat with her teammates in the middle section, her hands clasped in her lap as she tried to manage the anticipation that had been building since the conclusion of the presentations. Around them, students from 23 colleges shifted in their seats, whispering predictions about winners and discussing highlights from the day's problems. The energy was that peculiar mixture of exhaustion and excitement that followed intensive academic competition, minds tired from hours of complex problem-solving but spirits elevated by the satisfaction of mathematical challenges met and overcome. Dr. Williams approached the podium with a folder containing the results, her expression revealing nothing about the outcomes. The competition had been judged by a panel of mathematics professors from regional universities, and their evaluations had been thorough and rigorous. Before announcing our winners, Dr. Williams began, "I want to congratulate all participants on an exceptional day of mathematical problem-solving. The quality of solutions we observed today was outstanding, and several teams produced work that impressed our judging panel with both mathematical elegance and creative insight." She paused, allowing the anticipation to build. This year's problems were particularly challenging, designed to test not just computational ability but mathematical thinking at the highest levels. The students who excelled today demonstrated the kind of creative problem-solving that represents the best of mathematical education. The announcement of results began with recognition for outstanding individual performances. Several students were acknowledged for exceptional solutions to specific problems, their names called as examples of mathematical creativity under pressure. Maria felt a flutter of nervous anticipation as Dr. Williams continued through the individual recognitions. She had felt confident about her performance, but confidence and results didn't always align in competitive settings. One individual performance deserves special recognition, Dr. Williams announced. Problem 7 proved to be particularly challenging this year. Most participants attempted it, but correct solutions were rare. However, one student not only solved the problem correctly but developed an approach that our judging panel found more elegant than our intended solution. Maria's heart rate increased as she realized Dr. Williams was describing the problem she had spent 40 minutes perfecting. Maria Santos from Springfield Community College demonstrated exceptional mathematical insight with a solution that revealed hidden structure in the problem and approached it from an unexpected angle that simplified the entire calculation. The recognition was gratifying, but Maria was more interested in the team results that would reflect their collaborative effort over the entire day. Individual achievement was meaningful, but the team performance represented something larger: validation of weeks of preparation and proof that their diverse backgrounds had combined into something stronger than the sum of their parts. Team results were announced in reverse order, beginning with honorable mentions and building toward the highest scoring teams. As Dr. Williams worked through the rankings, Maria listened for their college's name while observing the reactions of teams around the auditorium. Third place goes to a team that demonstrated consistent excellence across all 3 rounds of competition, with particularly strong performances in the individual and team problem-solving segments. Riverside Community College, with a total score of 847 points. Amanda Chen's team celebrated their achievement with obvious joy. Third place at the regional level was a significant accomplishment that reflected both individual ability and effective teamwork. Second place was extremely close, just 8 points separated second and first place, indicating exceptional mathematical performance from both teams. Metro Technical College, with a total score of 891 points, demonstrated outstanding problem-solving ability and clear communication in their presentation. Maria felt the tension increasing as only first place remained. She glanced at her teammates and saw her own mixture of hope and nervousness reflected in their expressions. This year's first-place team achieved the highest score in the 5-year history of this competition. They excelled in all 3 rounds, with individual scores that ranked in the top tier regionally, team solutions that showed remarkable creativity and collaboration, and a presentation that impressed our judges with both mathematical content and clear communication. Dr. Williams paused, building suspense that had the entire auditorium holding its breath. First place, with a total score of 899 points, goes to Springfield Community College. The announcement triggered an explosion of celebration from Maria's section of the auditorium. Kevin leaped from his seat with a shout of triumph, Jennifer began crying with joy, and Marcus pumped his fist in the air. Professor Davidson's expression of pride and amazement was visible even from Maria's seat several rows ahead of him. Maria herself felt a moment of disbelief before the reality settled in. They had not just participated successfully but had achieved the highest level of recognition possible at the regional competition. Her unconventional journey from high school dropout to competitive mathematician had culminated in representing her college at the top of regional academic achievement. As the ceremony concluded and participants began gathering their materials, Maria found herself surrounded by congratulations from students and professors from other colleges. The mathematical community that had seemed intimidating that morning now welcomed her as a proven competitor whose abilities had earned respect through performance rather than reputation. Dr. Williams approached the Springfield team as they collected their first-place certificates and trophy. "I wanted to personally congratulate you on an exceptional performance," she said. "Your team's solutions consistently demonstrated the kind of mathematical thinking we hope to see in these competitions." She turned specifically to Maria. "Your individual performance was particularly impressive. Have you considered transferring to a 4-year university to pursue advanced mathematics? Several professors here today were asking about your background and future plans." The question represented opportunities Maria had never seriously considered. Transfer to a prestigious university, advanced mathematics courses, possibly even graduate school pathways that seemed impossibly distant when she had been struggling through basic algebra just 3 years earlier. "I'm planning to complete my associate degree and transfer to study civil engineering," Maria replied. "Mathematics has become a passion, but I've always wanted to apply it to infrastructure and construction projects." Dr. Williams nodded approvingly. "Engineering is an excellent application for your mathematical abilities. If you ever decide to explore pure mathematics, please feel free to contact me. Your problem-solving approach would serve you well in advanced mathematical research." As the Springfield team prepared to leave Central University, Professor Davidson gathered them for a brief celebration dinner at a restaurant near campus. The conversation was animated as they relived highlights from the competition and discussed what the results might mean for their academic futures. "I have to admit," Kevin said over dinner, "I underestimated you at the beginning of our preparation. Your approach to mathematics is completely different from what I learned in competition settings, but it's incredibly effective." Jennifer agreed. "You see patterns that the rest of us miss. It's like you understand the underlying structure of problems in a way that makes solutions obvious once you explain them." Professor Davidson had been largely quiet during the celebration, but, finally, offered his perspective on the day's achievements. "What I observed today was mathematics at its best: creative thinking, collaborative problem-solving, and clear communication of complex ideas. You represented our college exceptionally well." He turned to Maria specifically. I've been teaching for 25 years, and I've never seen mathematical development quite like yours. Your success today validates something I've always believed, that mathematical ability isn't just about early advantages or traditional educational paths. It's about how you think about problems and whether you're willing to work hard enough to develop your potential. As they drove back toward Springfield that evening, Maria reflected on the extraordinary day. The competition had tested everything she had learned about mathematics, problem solving, and working under pressure. More significantly, it had validated her belief that determination and hard work could overcome educational disadvantages and late starts. The conversation in the car turned to future plans and how the day's success might influence their academic trajectories. For her teammates, the competition results would strengthen graduate school applications and transfer opportunities. For Maria, the implications were more complex but equally significant. When they arrived back at Springfield Community College late that night, Professor Davidson walked Maria to her car in the nearly empty parking lot. The campus was quiet, but the buildings looked different somehow, not like institutions that had accepted her despite her unconventional background, but like places where she truly belonged. "I want you to think seriously about your future options," Professor Davidson said as they reached her car. "Today's performance opens doors you might not have considered. You have mathematical abilities that could take you in many directions." Maria appreciated his encouragement, but she also understood her priorities. "I'm grateful for everything that's happened, but my goal is still to become an engineer. I want to use mathematics to build things that help communities, bridges, water systems, infrastructure that makes people's lives better." Professor Davidson smiled. "That's exactly the kind of thinking that made you successful today. You see mathematics as a tool for solving real problems, not just an abstract academic exercise. That perspective will serve you well no matter what direction your career takes." As Maria drove home that night, her first-place certificate and trophy on the passenger seat beside her, she thought about the journey that had led to this moment. 3 years earlier, she had been afraid to attempt basic algebra, convinced that mathematics was beyond her ability. Tonight, she was returning home as a regional champion in competitive mathematics. The transformation had required more than just studying and problem solving. It had demanded that she reimagine what was possible for someone with her background and circumstances. Each successful examination, each concept mastered, each problem solved had built not just mathematical knowledge but confidence in her ability to achieve goals that had once seemed impossible. More than the competition results, Maria was proud of how the journey had changed her relationship with learning itself. She had discovered that education wasn't just about acquiring knowledge but about developing ways of thinking that could be applied to any challenge. The mathematical problem-solving skills she had developed were tools she could use throughout her engineering career and beyond. When Maria arrived home near midnight, Sophia was waiting up despite having school the next morning. Her daughter's excitement was immediate and overwhelming when she saw the trophy and certificate. "Mom, you won. You actually won the whole thing." As Maria described the day's events, the challenging problems, the team collaboration, the presentations to judges, and, finally, the moment when their college was announced as the regional champion, she saw in Sophia's eyes the same pride and amazement that she felt herself. "I'm so proud of you," Sophia said when her mother finished recounting the day. "You've shown me that it's never too late to chase your dreams and that hard work really can overcome anything." The conversation with Sophia revealed something Maria hadn't fully realized until that moment. Her journey back to education hadn't just been about her own goals and aspirations. It had been a demonstration to her daughter that challenges could be overcome, that dreams could be pursued at any age, and that setbacks didn't have to define the limits of what was possible. As they sat together in their small kitchen, the first-place trophy reflecting the overhead light, Maria understood that the competition had been about more than mathematical problem-solving. It had been proof that unconventional paths could lead to exceptional achievements, that determination could overcome disadvantages, and that it was never too late to discover abilities that had been waiting to be developed. The weeks following the competition brought unexpected attention and opportunities. Professor Davidson informed her that several universities had inquired about her background and transfer plans. Dr. Williams had contacted the mathematics department at Springfield, sharing her assessment that Maria's problem-solving abilities warranted consideration for advanced academic opportunities. More immediately, the competition's success had practical implications for Maria's engineering plans. Her mathematics professors began discussing accelerated pathways that would allow her to complete her associate degree earlier than planned and transfer to a 4-year engineering program with advanced standing. But, perhaps the most significant outcome was the confidence that came from proving to herself and others that mathematical excellence could develop from any starting point. The woman who had been afraid to attempt algebra 3 years earlier was now being recruited by universities and recognized as a mathematical talent worthy of national attention. The question that would define how others understood her remarkable journey, however, was still to come. In just a few days, Maria would return to Professor Davidson's advanced calculus class, where her competition performance would inevitably become a topic of discussion. When a classmate asked about her individual score, her response would reveal something important about both her mathematical achievement and her character, something that would silence the classroom and redefine how everyone understood what was possible when determination met opportunity. The moment that would test not just her mathematical knowledge but her wisdom in handling success was approaching. How she chose to answer would determine whether her achievement inspired others or simply amazed them, whether her story became an example of possibility or just an exceptional individual accomplishment. Maria Santos, former high school dropout and current regional mathematics champion, was about to face the kind of question that reveals character as clearly as any competition result. Her answer would demonstrate that the most important mathematical ability might be knowing how to use success to lift others rather than simply celebrating personal achievement.